You're listening to an Airwave Media Podcast.
Feel like who art ed?
We'll try to slice it.
Who art is Mr. Wood art ed me?
Good. Either way, it's ambiguous. It works on so many levels.
I know.
That's off to a great start.
Welcome to Who Arted, weekly art history for all ages. I'm your host, Kyle Wood, and today we're going to be looking at Marc Chagall. Have you ever seen a painting where maybe a cow is playing a violin or people are floating over a village? The chances are you were looking at a Chagall or someone ripping off a Chagall. He was an artist whose work is instantly recognizable, filled with magic, memory, and deep emotion. He blended traditional Jewish culture, Russian folklore, and the modern art movements he encountered into something totally unique. So today we're looking at his eventful life and his amazing art. Marc Chagall was born Moishe Shagal in 1887 near the town of Vitebsk, which was part of the Russian Empire, now in Belarus. He grew up in a poor, close-knit Hasidic Jewish community. It was a small town with wooden houses, synagogues, goats, chickens, and fiddlers playing music. These images would stay with him and appear in his paintings throughout his life. His family was supportive, even though being an artist wasn't a typical path. His mother apparently bribed a teacher to let young Marc into the local secular Russian school. He got his first real art training in Vitebsk, but he knew he needed more. So around 1907, he moved to the big city, St. Petersburg, the capital of Russia. At that time, because he was Jewish, he needed special permission just to live there. But he studied art, sometimes struggling, but always developing that unique vision. So then he moved from St. Petersburg to Paris. From 1911 to 1914, Chagall lived in the heart of the art world. He arrived in the buzzing city, seeing the incredible experiments happening with art, music, poetry. He met these poets and artists of the avant-garde, people pushing boundaries. He saw the bright, bold colors of the Fauvists like Matisse, the fragmented, geometric shapes of the Cubists like Picasso and Baroque. But Chagall didn't copy these styles, he absorbed them. And then he filtered them through his own imagination and life experiences. He took the colors of Fauvism and made them even more emotional. He took the fractured perspectives of Cubism, but used them not just to show different angles, but to weave together memories and feelings like a dream. It was in Paris that he really started painting these signature floating figures and fantastical scenes inspired by his memories of Vitebsk. And he returned there in 1914, intending only a short visit, but World War I broke out, trapping him in Russia. It wasn't all bad, though. In 1915, he married his beloved Bella Rosenfeld, the love of his life and his constant muse. You'll see her floating gracefully through many of his paintings. The Russian Revolution happened in 1917, and initially, Chagall was actually enthusiastic. He was even made Commissar of Arts in Vitebsk. He founded an art school and tried to bring modern art to his hometown. But artistic and political disagreements arose, especially with the artist Kazimir Malevich, who favored pure abstraction, and Chagall just became disillusioned with the whole thing. In 1923, Marc Chagall left Russia with Bella and their daughter Ida, eventually settling back in Paris. The years between the wars were productive. His fame grew. He illustrated books, and his work became richer, often celebrating love and connection, but sometimes hinting at the growing darkness in Europe with rising anti-Semitism. That looming darkness became a terrifying reality with World War II. As a Jewish artist whose work was labeled, quote, degenerate by the Nazis, Chagall was in serious danger. Thankfully, there was a rescue mission organized by Alfred Barr Jr. of New York's Museum of Modern Art, among others. Chagall and Bella escaped France in 1941 and found refuge in the United States. Tragically, Bella died suddenly from an infection in 1944. Chagall was devastated, couldn't paint for months. Her loss profoundly affected his work, and we see a more somber tone in a lot of the work after that. After the war, Chagall returned to France in 1948. He eventually found love again with Valentina Brodsky, known as Vava, whom he married in 1952. He settled in the south of France and entered an incredibly prolific late phase. He didn't just paint. He explored ceramics, sculpture, tapestries, and very famously stained glass. His stunning stained glass windows graced cathedrals and synagogues around the world, including the United Nations building in New York and the Art Institute of Chicago. He continued working right up until his death in 1985 at the age of 97. His life spanned Imperial Russia, revolutions, 2 world wars, exile, and the entire arc of modern art. And through it all, he maintained his unique poetic voice, drawing on his heritage, his memories, and his heart. So now let's take a closer look at one of his famous paintings, I and the Village, from 1911. Chagall painted I and the Village during his first magical, influential period in Paris. He was just 24 years old, soaking up Cubism and Fauvism, but his heart and mind were clearly still full of Vitebsk, his childhood home. The painting is like a vibrant, swirling dream of nostalgia. So, what do we see? The first thing that grabs you is just the unusual composition. It's dominated by 2 large profiles facing each other. On the right, a green-faced man is wearing a cap, likely Chagall himself. And on the left, there's the large head of an animal, maybe a cow or a sheep, with a little scene of a woman milking a cow painted inside its cheek. A thin line connects the large, staring eyes, suggesting a deep, almost mystical connection between the human and animal worlds, so central to that rural life. The background isn't a realistic space. It's broken up into colorful, overlapping geometric shapes. We see triangles, circles, segments. That's the influence of Cubism. But unlike the often monochromatic, purely formal experiments of Picasso and Braque, Chagall fills his shapes with radiant color, reds, blues, bright greens, and a sunny yellow. Nestled within these shapes, we see scenes from Vitebsk. There's a row of colorful little houses, some upside down, a church, figures, a man with a scythe, and a woman also upside down, floating past each other. It's like memories tumbling around in his head. There's also a hand holding a flowering branch, maybe representing life, or the tree of life, an important symbol in Jewish mysticism. The whole painting feels, on some level, illogical. I mean, why is the man's face green? Why are the figures upside down? Why is there a milking scene inside the cow's head? Chagall isn't trying to paint reality as we see it. He's painting an inner reality, a world woven from memory, emotion, folklore, his deep connection to his roots. The green face might be symbolic of nature, or it could be a connection to an emotion. It could have just been he liked that color and thought it fit the composition. It's a choice based on his feel and the vibe of the work more than the realism of what he was actually seeing. The upside-down figures capture the dizzying feeling of memory and distance, or perhaps the topsy-turvy nature of life as experienced moving between these worlds. The small village where he grew up in Russia, and Paris, the global capital of modern art world. I and Village is significant because it's one of the earliest paintings where Chagall has fully developed his unique style. He takes the cutting-edge techniques of Parisian modernism and connects them with his personal history, his Jewish heritage, Russian folk motifs, and the intense personal feelings of nostalgia and connection. It's not quite Cubism, not quite Fauvism, not quite Surrealism, although the Surrealists later claimed him as an influence. It's purely Chagall. He showed us that modern art didn't have to be cold and purely intellectual. It can be deeply personal, narrative, and full of wonder. This concludes this week's episode of Who Arted, part of the Airwave Media Podcast Network. If you found this tolerable, please leave a rating or review on your favorite podcast app. You can find images of the work being discussed this week and every week on social media at Who Arted Podcast on Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok, and of course on the website whoartedpodcast.com. Podcast done.